Down the stretch they come. Philly plays Miami. They play Orlando twice. They got to win one of those three to secure that number one seed. Brooklyn is a game and a half back with 3 to go. Philly has the tiebreaker. We'll ask Keith Smith from Yahoo Sports how that will play out. What will the 4-5 matchup be? It looks like we know who 7 through 10 will be. And then we'll look at the West as well, how the West will be won. Philly and Miami tonight. Could be no Joel Embiid here on 97.3 ESPN. Let's bring Keith Smith in. Yahoo Sports covers the NBA at Keith Smith NBA on Twitter. He is back on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Keith, what's up, my man?
Hey, a lot. It's, as you said, we're right down to the end here, and there's still nothing, has been decided as far as seeding wise.
Down the stretch they come. What do we know? Nothing. All right, so what can we find out tonight? What are some of the key things that are happening tonight? Because you got Philly, Miami. That game has a lot of implications. Atlanta is in action tonight, and that game has some implications.
Yeah, well, we've definitely got you were mentioning before, the advent of the play-in has, roughly 22 teams still alive this late in the season, which is absolutely amazing. So you have almost every game means something. Rarely are we getting a game here where it's like, that game, doesn't mean anything. It's two terrible teams. Even when the bad teams, they're, not maybe what we want. They're trying to lose, but it still means something. The Cleveland Cavaliers beat the Boston Celtics, and all that did was get about 3 more fan bases super excited that Cleveland won a game. So tonight, Philadelphia can wrap it all up. They're going to get the 1 seed because they're not going to lose. Even if they lose tonight, they're not going to lose both games to Orlando. If that happens, then quite frankly, they don't deserve the 1 seed. But they'll get that wrapped up either tonight or tomorrow. We'll see if Jimmy Butler plays for Miami tonight. That's, big game for them because they're trying to hold off the Knicks. They're trying to catch the Hawks. So, yeah, still a lot to be decided down the stretch.
Right. You just said it. The Miami game, it is important for them because they have moved themselves into the number 5 spot currently, right? And they are tied with the Knicks. They're only a half game behind. So 4, 5, and 6 are all within a half game of each other. Gut feeling, what's the 4-5 matchup?
Yeah, I think it's going to end up being Atlanta and Miami. And the only reason I say that is because Philadelphia has that cushion of those 2 Orlando games. I don't know how hard they'll push to get the win tonight and get it wrapped up, unless their whole idea is we're going to be able to take those 2 games kind of off and be done with this. So I'll give Miami a fairly good shot tonight. And then New York's got a couple tough games. A lot of it's going to come down to how much Boston wants that last game in the regular season on Sunday. If the Celtics have, anything to play for, like they're trying to be the 7th seed and host a play-in tournament or anything like that, then maybe, New York might be in a little bit of trouble. But we'll see. At this point, I'm just kind of going to lean towards the teams I think that are a little bit better. So I'll go with Atlanta and Miami, with New York dropping into the 6.
All right, and if Chicago loses tonight, Washington would clinch a play-in berth as well. So then the play-in teams would be Boston, Charlotte, Indy, Washington in some order. That hasn't been determined yet either. But of those 4, which of the 4 is the best, is clearly the best of those 4?
I think it's still Boston, but it's starting to be a major question how much they really care down the stretch here. I think it's been a long season, coming off of a long season with a short off season, and they have underperformed. And now Jaylen Brown's out for the year. I think they are starting to look at it and saying, all right, we can push this thing. We can get into the postseason, but they're not going to beat Philadelphia if they're the 8 seed. They're not going to beat Brooklyn if they're the 2 seed, or if they're the 7th seed and Brooklyn's the 2 seed. So it's starting to look like, Charlotte is pretty hungry. For them, getting to the playoffs would be a big deal. For Washington, getting into the playoffs, that's kind of a big deal. So those teams you seem to want it a little bit more. I think Boston's still the best team, and I think they can prove that over the next week or so here while we go through the play-in process. But I'm just not sure how much they really want it.
Right, exactly. Well, Boston, you would know Boston well too, Keith. You follow them on a pretty much day-to-day basis, and they lose Jaylen Brown. What kind of pin did that put to the balloon?
Yeah, that pretty much, kind of, the final nail in the coffin, whatever we want to call it. It really, ended things for them. They were still, thinking through it of, all right, if we can get everybody healthy, we've shown what we can do when we have, most of our guys. So this is now with Brown out for the year. They're never going to have played a game this year where their top 7 players were available at the same time.
Wow.
And that's not even counting Evan Fournier, who just got to the team. This is their top 7 guys they thought they would have going into the season. They've never had that even for one game this year. So that it kind of gives you a sense of where they're at. But they still believed, hey, if we can get there and get our guys healthy, and it looked like they might have finally been, turning that corner a little bit, we can make a run here in the playoffs. And with Jaylen Brown out, it just puts too much pressure on the other guys. They can still be, as Brad Stevens put it, we can still be a nuisance. They could still get into a playoff series, even with Philly or Brooklyn, and maybe win a game or two if Jason Tatum goes crazy and Kemba Walker is big, but they're just not a real threat to do much of anything. And Jaylen Brown being out was kind of the final, blow to that.
Yeah, and this is amazing. I mean, this is a team that was the 3rd youngest team in the Eastern Conference Finals. They had been there multiple times. They sweep out the Sixers last year, and here we are one season later. Philly looked like the arrow was going down. Boston looked like the arrow was going up. How did they flip-flop so quickly?
Well, if you want to take the rest of the night off, I'll take the rest of your show. We'll run through that. There's a lot of reasons for it. I think Danny Ainge stubbornly held on to all of those draft picks. And I've written this, I've said this multiple times. After he nailed the drafting of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, including the trade with Philadelphia, those picks kind of became almost, they were house money to an extent. But then what they did was, instead of moving those picks in trades or anything like that, he kept hanging on. Those picks didn't deliver the way they really hoped. The Kings had one of their best seasons that they've had in years. That ended up the last pick in the lottery. The Grizzlies, much better than anybody expected. Last pick in the lottery. Those players are okay, but what's happened to Boston now is their bench is ridiculously young and inexperienced, and they basically went into this year with very little depth. They had about 5-6 guys that they felt really good about, and then after that, it was, all right, well, we hope this rookie can step forward. We hope this rookie can step forward. Maybe this guy comes back from injury and looks good. And when you're really sitting there with about 6 guys you feel good about, a 7th guy you feel okay about, and then you have any kind of injury problems, which they had throughout the year with Kemba Walker and then Jason Tatum and then Marcus Smart, then Tristan Thompson, then Jaylen Brown. What ended up happening was they were over-reliant on young depth, and that didn't get it done. On the flip side, Philadelphia kind of cashed in on some of their younger pieces, started moving guys out, went in and got some veterans who fit really well, and now they've made that push up the standings. It really is, like you said, it kind of became almost like ships passing in the night.
Keith Smith, the Cliff Notes version of what happened to the Boston Celtics this year in the East. And then, you got that whole little clump in the middle with 3, 4, 5, 6, not 3, 4, Atlanta, 4, 5, and 6. Those are 3 surprise teams for different reasons. Atlanta was a surprise, New York a real surprise, and Miami surprisingly in this position. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out as well. But let's go to the top, where Philly needs one win. Brooklyn finally seemingly getting healthy here. Everybody seems to still be picking them. And then there's the Bucks. What happened to them in that game against San Antonio?
Yeah, that one was really kind of came out of nowhere. Now, the Spurs were desperate, and there are a lot of times when a team is desperate to win in the NBA, they'll come out and they'll play with, supreme effort, and especially in this season where, teams are playing, 3 games in 4 nights and guys are worn down and those kind of things. We've seen some really odd results. But that one was, really kind of came out of nowhere. And with the Bucks, that really kind of killed any chance that they had of moving up in the standings. That loss was, about it for them. So, yeah, I think we're going to see this finish Philly, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee, and then we'll see, because I've said it to you guys for weeks now. You want that 1 seed because you only want to have to beat one of those other teams in the East Finals. You did not want to have to go through 2 of those teams, because you're probably then 2-3, which looks like it'll be Brooklyn, Milwaukee. Most likely that's going to be an extended series. It's going to be a tough series. It's going to take a lot out of guys. And Philadelphia as the 1 seed, and I'm, basically kind of penciling them in there. it's not going to be a cakewalk in the second round, especially if it's Miami in that second round series. But they should be able to get through it easier than Brooklyn or Milwaukee's going to have in theirs. And then that gives them the leg up. Not only that, but also home court advantage, which more and more fans are going to be in these buildings. That's starting to look like it'll really be something. So I think Philly's in really good shape here moving forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. As Philly announced that they're going to be going to 50% capacity and then a full building by the time they get to the NBA Finals. So if they can get to the NBA Finals, it looks like Philadelphia will have a full building for the finals. Right now, the Philly opponent in round one would be either Boston, Charlotte, Indiana, Washington. Let me ask you about that, Keith Smith. Do these teams have kind of a disadvantage that they have no clue who they're playing until essentially a day or two before they match up?
To an extent, yes. I think that comes into play much more in the Western Conference, where you have the Lakers kind of hanging out there maybe as one of the teams. You'd really like to know, all right, do we need to prepare for LeBron James and Anthony Davis? I think in the East, I don't think Philadelphia or Brooklyn is overly concerned about who the 7-8 teams are. They should beat any of those teams. It is funny because there is, part of it you look at it and say, boy, if it's Philly and Boston, that starts to be just one of those things where, let's just say Boston gets hot from the field and wins game one, all of a sudden you're going to have, mass panic from the Philadelphia side, because it's like, here we go again. We just can't, we can't get past these guys in the postseason. And then, I still, I would pick Philadelphia, and I'd probably pick them in about 5 games to win that series. But that's where I think it's there. But I'll tell you, I think after this, grinding marathon of the season, or not even marathon, sprint of a season to get to these, 72 games in, I think you'd much rather have the 5 or 6 days off and, just kind of focus on yourself in those first few days, get yourself healthy, focus on cleaning up some of your own mistakes, maybe, put in a couple new things people haven't seen yet, and then you'll have plenty of time to prep for whoever it is you're going to play, because you'll have that sense, especially Philadelphia, because they'll know on the first night of the play-in when the 7-8 play, all right, we know who now is going to, well, they won't know which team, but they'll know who it's not going to be, and in some ways that's just as important as everybody else is.
Yeah, all right, let's go real quick to the West. As we told you on the East, Keith Smith is with us from Yahoo Sports, covers the NBA. Tonight, Atlanta clinches the division title with a win and a loss by Miami. Chicago would be eliminated with a loss. Philadelphia would clinch the best record and the number 1 seed with a win tonight. And Washington clinches a play-in berth with a loss by Chicago. That's on the East. Tonight, Phoenix would clinch the Pacific title with a win and a loss by the Clippers, so that would get them above the Clippers. Portland clinches a playoff spot with a win. That keeps them out of the play-in game. San Antonio would clinch a play-in spot with a win tonight or a loss by Sacramento, and Sacramento is eliminated with a loss. So that's on the West of what happens tonight. But we still have L.A. just 1 game behind Dallas and Portland. So does L.A. get out of the play-in and get in? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna, because they need help, and that's the tricky part. Is if there was a situation where they just controlled their own destiny over these last couple games, I'd say, yeah, sure, I think they're going to get there, but I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to be, in that play-in, and that's going to make it tough on them, because that's a couple extra games they need to play. They don't get that downtime. Clearly, they're being very cautious with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and then beyond that, it just makes their path that much harder. They're not going to have home court in any of their series going forward. They're going to have to play, the best teams in the league on the road. And I think that makes it tough on what, has proven to be behind James and Davis, a very limited Lakers team.
Yeah, that should be if you are one of the top 2 teams in the West, you're thinking, are you kidding me? We might have to play L.A. or Golden State the way Seth Curry is currently going. And I would imagine the NBA is just absolutely foaming at the mouth at the possibility of an L.A. Golden State play-in game.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what's very interesting with the Warriors in Grizzlies is they're trying to hold off the Grizzlies from catching them for that 8th spot, and then they are going to play on Sunday. And unless Memphis loses their next 2 games, which is pretty unlikely, we might almost see Warriors-Grizzlies as a pseudo play-in to determine the play-in order to figure it out from there. So it's going to, this play-in tournament for all the criticisms it has taken, if you're just a fan of the game and you want to see, fun and exciting games, you're going to get it. Because in the East, there's all sorts of interesting teams left there and interesting players left. And then you hit the nail on the head, Mike. If it is Lakers, Warriors, a single game elimination, they'll still have the chance in the next one, but a single game to play into the playoffs, that is must-watch TV that we'll all have to be tuned into, because for me, that throws Stephen Curry right back to the Davidson days of, this guy was the biggest single elimination monster that, the NCAA tournament has seen in years, with the way he could just will his team to a victory. That's definitely a game I know I will not miss.
Definitely. Keith Smith, we will not miss him next week, because by next week we will know most of them. Now, we will not know who the Sixers' opponent will be, but we'll be knowing who's in the game to play, because that game, I believe, Keith, is Friday night, right?
As far as we know right now, that is what it looks like. We don't have final confirmation exactly how the play-in tournament is gonna play out, but we'll have at least an idea of who the two teams it could be, or there is a slight possibility if they stagger it by conference where we could know. I think it's more likely we'll know who the two teams are. All
right, there you go. So we'll talk to Keith about that. We'll have the playoff matchups all set, ready to go. And by the way, Tuesday night you can listen to the play-in game right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Keith, we'll talk to you then, pal.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Great stuff, as always, from national NBA writer Keith Smith from Yahoo Sports. We have him every Thursday here for Inside the Sixers.